One of my favorite topics to discuss with families is the family life cycle. The reason why I love this topic is because it really does reconnect us in ways that our society has many times disconnected us. Our society is embedded in what we refer to as individualism, the idea that my life doesn't affect yours, that your life can go in a direction, and no matter what happens, it has no bearing on the outcome of my life. This is not a common practice throughout the world. It's not a common belief. One of the inherent beliefs throughout many communities, especially African diaspora communities, as well as indigenous, is in a concept called interdependence or interconnectedness. It's the idea that we are all inherently connected in a way that we depend upon each other to a degree, that each of our lives actually does affect and impact one another's. And as a result, we do everything we can to make sure that we create space for and support and engage with your life in a way that we would want our own supported and engaged with. Now, how does this affect families? Well, the family life cycle is this understanding that at different stages we have different roles, we have different responsibilities and ways of engagement. When you're a parent and you have a child, your child is completely dependent. As you get older, your child increases in its agency and awareness of its environment to be able to actualize itself, to be able to begin to direct its own sense of purpose and direction in this life. And the role of the parent becomes less about assuring basic necessities are met and more as a supportive mechanism of creating space for the child to grow into that agency, to find the access to resources, know how, connections, relationships, communities that allow them to thrive and to flourish in the direction that they see their lives are heading in. But this is where it becomes more and more difficult that a parent goes from one form of relationship where they are dependent upon heavily to one where more and more how they used to be dependent upon is completely changing. No longer do they require someone to tell everything that they need to do from day to day, clean up your room, brush your teeth, put on your clothes. But they actually become more of a supportive mechanism that says, how do I support you in life? How do I support you in life, not just in your day to day, but in the direction that you're heading in? One of the things that many parents are not aware of is that these stages of development progress in such that your child has an attention to learn not about the stage of development that they're in, but the stage of development that they are entering into. In other words, they will be highly aware of relationships far before they begin to demonstrate the desire to be in relationships, the whole boyfriend girlfriend era, or wanting to hang out with their friends all the time. Years before that stage, they were highly attuned to observing you in your relationships, those around them, those adults, those older siblings, and how they navigated relationship. And so supporting your child many times means observing not just where they're at, but where they're heading. It also requires that we are observant to what interests them, what they begin to want to watch on television or on Netflix, what they begin to talk about more or draw about or write about, the different things that signal where their brains are attentive to. And then as we continue to get older and they step more and more into their sense of identity, there's going to be a need for them to know about you, the person, about you, the human being, because they're entering a stage in which they are trying to find a sense of identity in who they are. And the more transparent and open that you are, the more they can see the parts of themselves that they might be curious about, that they may not be certain of, or have a degree of um, lack of assurance of its impact in their lives. Right? Am I going to struggle in the same way that my parents struggled? Am I going to succeed in the same way that they succeeded? Being transparent about your journey allows them to contextualize what they see in you that's reflected in them. But as we continue to get older, they begin to transition into a space where, and this is the tricky part, our society would present them as 18, 19, you're an adult, they should leave the home. This is very contrary to most of the world. Most of the world understands that adulthood is not a age, it's a maturation. It is a recognition that someone has embraced a degree of responsibility in their lives that says they are now moving in this awareness, the wisdom, the understanding of their environment, relationships, and their families. And that is a designator of their maturity into adulthood. Your role as a parent is now to begin to become more of a consultant, someone who is observing, but more from a distance. But the reason why this is important to remain connected in this relationship dynamic is because how they continue to evolve and grow is directly going to impact you more and more and more and more. Maybe not as directly as it felt like when they were children, but more so as the future ensues. As you get into your elder years, now their ability to navigate life, their sense of agency and ability to figure out what they're needing for themselves is going to directly impact their ability to now support you. Now, I know sometimes we can have a misconstrued idea about what it means to require the support of our children, but this is not a new concept in the world. Most people understand that as you become an elder, you have more and more physical limitations. You have less and less ability to produce and less agency in order to manipulate and navigate your environment, and you will need your children. In fact, many studies show that intergenerational homes where grandchildren grow up with grandparents in the same home, both of them have higher health outcomes and social outcomes in terms of their actualization, their ability to succeed academically in their careers for grandchildren, or for the ability for grandparents to maintain access to community support, health outcomes, etc. But it's to say that the more that we're able to maintain connection and support one another, the more we're able to move through this family life cycle in a way that's not only sustainable, but allows us each to thrive. Think about how many of us had to send our children at 3 months old, 6 months old, a year old to complete strangers for daycare, spending many times almost the equivalent of rent or a mortgage for a stranger to watch our children. And yet, studies show overwhelmingly that grandparents who are within the home of their grandchildren, who can drop them off to school, pick them up, make them meals, support them with homework, talk to them about their day, have the ability to support their children far more than any daycare agency that has 30, 40 kids in a room will ever be able to. Now, here's the kicker is how do we support one another in relationship in a way that allows each other to fully breathe and actualize ourselves as individuals? This is where this concept of individuation comes in a tremendous way. Individuation is this understanding of our connection to one another, but also our individual story and journey. This can be a balance because many times, in order to step away, what we see modeled to us is that we have to separate ourselves completely. We have to tell ourselves or tell our parents or tell our children that, hey, I am doing my own thing and I should do my own thing. Sometimes we even encourage our children to go off and do their own thing. And many times this is um, it's kind of a swing of a pendulum to an extreme. When the reality is, we need the space to be autonomous within our own individuality, but at the same time, recognize that we still need each other. We still need your insight. We still need your wisdom. We still need your understanding. And as your children get older, you will need them to find the new understandings that they've been able to explore and experience in this world that you haven't as you become an elder. You will need their insight. You will need their understanding. Shoot, many of our elders today need our help with technology, computers, their cell phones, right? Navigating different opportunities that come their way when the person who wants to refinance their home calls, right? And then they call you. These are all the ways that we're still connected to one another. And so it's important that as we create space for ourselves, as we create space for our children, that we maintain that connection. And the further we progress into our elder state, the more and more we return back to the child, the more we return back to a greater level of dependency. But it doesn't mean that we still don't have something to give. It means that we now have the perspective of a life lived that is now being able to see from generation to generation, to be able to move through some mistakes that we may have made, observations of opportunities, timing, relationship dynamics, needs, concerns, values, rituals, culture, community, all these different things that you acquire over the lifespan. You now have the ability to not only give your children, but probably most importantly, the opportunity to give your grandchildren. You see, I often say that the parent is your child's first teacher. The parent is the child's first teacher, but the grandparent is the child's first professor. The grandparent is the professor who can ask the critical questions, who can take the time to observe and be critical to say, what is it that my child or my grandchild is developing into? How do I create space for them? How do I act as an intermediary between them and their parent? Because I understand their parent and I'm also observing the grandchild, right? This specific role many times is able to hold and to create an insulation for the parent child relationship, giving advice to the child to do potentially better, more effectively, what the parent observes is needed in the moment. Many times they're also able to give understanding and insight to the child who is curious, why does my parent move and behave in the way that they do, in a way that affects me tremendously? Now, many times this is a dynamic that not all of us have access to. Not all of us have had someone there to support within that family life cycle. What's interesting is to also recognize that as much as elders have something to teach us, our children do as well. Our children come into this world with a degree of purity, a degree of um, acceptance of themselves, and an acceptance of you. There's little to no judgment because they haven't been taught that they should judge. They're able to accept their reality and those around them as they are. And this is a gift. It reminds us to begin to learn how to accept ourselves, to accept one another, that we never had to be perfect to be great in their eyes. We never had to be all these things that we might believe we need to be in order to feel accepted and wanted by our children. When we walk through the door and our child runs up to us and jumps in our arms, they're not asking us how much money we made today. They're not evaluating our outfit, our hair, our makeup. They're not looking at the car we drove. They're not asking us what are our long term prospects. They accept us for us. These are the lessons that we each have to teach one another, which is why maintaining that connection to one another is important because we're all teaching one another throughout this family life cycle. Now, one of the greatest challenges that you'll have as a parent is not projecting your experience onto your child in an attempt to support them. You see, the reality is our children grow up in a completely different time, a completely different experience. And even though there will be nuances where we can reflect upon our own experience and offer insight and wisdom into their own, being observant and making sure that we're not projecting our experience into theirs is how we ensure that we apply it in a way that's effective and can actually support them in their experience instead of assuming that they're having the same ones that we have. I hope that that made sense. Because if we continue to project our own experience onto them, what ends up happening is we erase the person in front of us. Now we're no longer supporting the child in front of us, we're supporting our inner child that we see in front of us. And as a result, we can completely miss our child in front of us. We can completely miss the person who has their own needs. And we can be given all these things to them. And the whole while, it's not meeting their need. The sad part is sometimes at the end of giving and giving and giving, we then get frustrated because then we say, don't you notice all these things that I've done for you? And like many people in relationships, when they don't feel seen and heard in what they're actually needing and asking for, people resent what was given. Or they begin to say, I never asked for that. I never asked you to work more hours so that I can get these toys. I never asked you to sacrifice the things that I was needing so you can give me what you thought I wanted. You see, if we're not careful, we will begin to parent our children as a means of self soothing our own inner child. We'll end up thinking that the things I'm doing for them are actually meeting the needs that we believe that we had when we were children. And many times this is because we failed to find that individuation within our own relationship to our parents. We failed to be able to separate ourselves from them and recognize that they were individuals who were along their journey as well, as we are our own, and our children will be as well. This is all a part of the things that, as parents, we have an opportunity to learn and to garner and hopefully one day offer to our own children. And if we're so blessed and lucky, I would say, grow to be elders and grandparents who can offer these nuggets of wisdom and insight about life to our grandchildren. Because that truly is what I would refer to as generational wealth. It's not the money, it's not the material, it's not the things. It's the wisdom that took sometimes years, decades, significant harms and life lessons and going through that we were able to discover wisdom and then give it to our grandchildren so that they grow up with it. They grow up with deep understanding and knowledge that allows them to navigate a world that we don't know, but we can trust in the process that what we've poured into them from what was poured into us will continue to bear fruit to the benefit of everyone. I hope this makes sense. Please definitely feel free to like, subscribe, definitely share the video, continue the conversation. I look forward to seeing you all again. Take care.